So peeps, I wanted to talk today about tools and the difference between and the advantages and disadvantages between channel lock pliers and wrenches, and the reason why we use them and interchange them throughout our jobs. So I just want to bring up a couple of things. First of all, this is your typical channel lock plier. This is basically the staple of every plumber's repertoire. We carry it on ourselves every single day. It does most things, at least for me and my dad. It comes out first before any other thing because they're so damn versatile. This is a toothed plier because it's got some ridges here, which is intended for gripping. And that is both an advantage and a disadvantage for this tool right here. It also opens up pretty wide. If you're looking for speed, this is typically the tool that you're gonna use. You can also use this while soldering, so that's why it's got a discoloration to it. It actually used to be sorta this color right here, but over the years, because of using it with a torch and holding things while the torch is actually flaming on this as well, it does become discolored. But that's also one of the advantages. You can grab things with this even though they're on fire. Now the thing is about channel lock pliers is that they are really good for rough work. In other words, if you're not really looking for a finished look, a lot of times channel lock pliers are the way you're gonna go. The biggest disadvantage with these guys is that because of the teeth on it, you're going to leave marks typically on the things that you're using it on. So we typically use this on supply lines, for example, because a lot of people don't really look at the supply line as the finishing of a product. We also use this on basket strainers. We use this to tighten rod with it. And like I said, you bring these out first and foremost before everything else. Now, the thing is that when you want a finished product, you want something that doesn't have any scrapes or marks on it, and that's when you have to move over to an adjustable wrench. This adjustable wrench has seen better days. It looks like it's in rough shape, but that's what the wrench comes out for. Anytime you're about to do something that needs a finished look, that shouldn't have any marks on it, that's when the wrench comes into play. Now the thing with the wrench is, the disadvantage to it, at least for me, is that it actually takes a little bit more time to do the same thing that the plier will do. As you can see, the plier is a little bit more ergonomically designed for speed because you can tighten and then readjust and come back and tighten and readjust and come back and tighten. With the adjustable wrench, you can do the same thing, and I'm sure there are people that are so efficient with this that it's almost the same as me using one of these, but I find it, especially with finer things, if you're tightening a nut, for example, you have to, every time you tighten, you gotta tighten down, you gotta rotate this on top, and then you gotta release and come back and rotate it again. Release, come back and rotate it again. So you're constantly opening and closing it so that it clamps down on whatever nut that you're using it on. With this, you're sort of never fully releasing, which is where the scratches come into play, because as you'll tighten, you'll actually continue to hold it as you slightly release, and then you'll tighten again. And that's where the scratches come into play. But another big advantage to using an adjustable wrench is space. As you can see, it is about 2/3 the length of the pliers right here. Now, this isn't usually a big deal because there is typically enough space, but every once in a while, you'll see a toilet that's installed really close to a wall, which means that the pipe coming out for it, which is its cold water supply, is also going to be really tight to the wall. So these might not be the most practical things to use in those tight spaces, which is when you have to pull these bad boys out and use these because you don't need as much space to get the torque on it. But that's also why it's really useful to have different sizes of both your channel locks and also your adjustable wrenches as well, because these make space. But one other con to using the adjustable wrench is its torque factor. Because it's a shorter wrench, it's a little bit more difficult to get the torque on it that you need. Sometimes you really need to crank something because it's not moving for you, and especially if you're doing something that's cylindrical rather than octagonal or hexagonal, this will be absolutely useless to you, which is why we have the channel lock pliers in our pocket. But if you're doing something that requires a finished look that can't have any sort of marks on it, these aren't the best guys to go for, which is why the perfect thing is, and this came from a subscriber out there, is getting a set of channel lock pliers that don't have any teeth. Now, I gotta say, I do have a pair of these that don't have teeth on them, but the difficulty is the moment you don't have teeth on your pliers and you're tightening something cylindrical like a shower head or a shower arm, for example, the teeth on this help a lot because you can get traction on that chrome, but at the same time, you're gonna leave marks. So one thing that I've typically done in the past is I've taken a cloth glove and I've put it in between here, and then I've cranked down and I've tightened, and that usually helps. As long as it doesn't slip and one of these teeth doesn't show, you won't make any marks on the chrome itself. So that's something to keep in mind. But the other thing, like I was saying before, is that getting a set of pliers that don't have any teeth is crucial. Now look, these are a Knipex pair of pliers, and the wonderful part about the Knipex pair of pliers is that they have an adjustment here that allows you to lock your channel locks into place. So when you find your size, it actually locks and you do not have to worry about it opening up on you, which means that now at this point you can pay full attention to just trying to torque whatever it is you're trying to torque. This was suggested to me by a subscriber named Kyle Fogel. These were a really great buy. The other advantage to having these pliers though is that when you're dealing with something like a shower head and you have the shower arm coming out, you can actually use the bottom of these pliers to end up tightening the shower arm rather than putting the teeth on as well. So they're just really super versatile. Now, one thing I gotta say about the Knipex pliers is that, as you can see, they don't get as much mileage as the regular tooth plier that we have because these are really designed for a finished product. So there are very specific situations where you're gonna use these guys, which would be like on a shower head, or if you were working with flashometers, a lot of times these can tighten those nuts really well, for example. But what you have to keep in mind is that these are the sort of things that you have to have in your repertoire, because every once in a while you're gonna run into a situation where one thing will not do the job like the other thing. I can't tell you how many times I've been inside a customer's apartment, inside their cabinet, trying to tighten something, and all of a sudden I realize that these damn pliers are way too big for me to tighten whatever it is down there like a supply line. So I'd have to reach into the bag and find this guy just because of the length of it. Makes life so much easier. And that's really the usefulness of tools. You're gonna have a tool that has one very specific situation that it's used for, but if you don't have that tool in your toolbox, it's gonna take you twice or 3 times as long to do the same job. So these are some things to keep in your bag, which are typical of plumbing: adjustable wrenches, longer ones, and even shorter ones. Really important. One thing to keep in mind, and what I find a little bit irritating about the shorter ones, or the ones that aren't made as well, is that sometimes this rolling mechanism that closes the jaws on these, sometimes it's not a strong mechanism, so as you're tightening, this will loosen on you, which is why you want your fingers on it at all times. But I also find with larger ones or better made ones, for example, you can actually adjust it to the size one time and it tends to keep its jaws locked in place for a really long duration of time before needing to open and close them again. So having a set of these is uber important, and it's something I do suggest to have inside your repertoire. And then of course the channel lock plier is the one that you're going to be going to every day for almost every job. And then it's a little bit more expensive. I think these were like north of $100 to be honest, these Knipex pliers. But for the situations that you run into where you're dealing with fine chrome and you don't want any teeth and you've gotten tightened down on a few nuts, these guys will leave marks. You might as well grab one of these because they will make your life a whole lot easier. So peeps, do me a favor, let me know if this is something you're interested in. If you want me to do reviews on tools and the disadvantages and advantages to using each and every one. So let me know in the comments below if this was a thumbs up or if it's something that you don't care for. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you guys very soon. Kenny Molotov, guys. Peace, baby.